Hi guys, welcome to Make Your Own. My name is Annie and I'm so excited to share my latest knitting pattern here with you. And that is this chunky and cozy balaclava. This balaclava is knitted from the top down, which makes it very easy to adjust size and fit as you go. It's knitted in our dreamy blend in the color Ocean Blue. It's knitted with double strands on 10mm needles, which makes this a quick project. It's created using simple techniques, which makes this product perfect for both beginners and the more experienced knitters. And the best part is that you can adjust both the size and the length of the balaclava to match your own style. It's a quick and fun knit, perfect for the chilly days when you want something that's both stylish and practical. I hope you will love this pattern just as much as I did, and I wish you all happy knitting. Bye! Okay, so we will need 10mm needles, at least 60 centimeters long, and 2 skeins of yarn since we are knitting with 2 threads. Okay, so we're going to start by casting on 16 stitches. You can use whichever technique you prefer since the edge won't be visible in the final result. I will show you how I usually do it. I believe this technique is called the long tail cast on. We will start by pulling out a length of the yarn. Since we're not casting on too many stitches, about 40 centimeters will be enough. You will hold the yarn around your thumb and your index finger and secure the strand with your other fingers. Now the yarn will form a triangle. Okay, so here comes the tricky part. We are going to take the needle, move it from behind and under the middle strand to go over the yarn at the thumb and through the small loop created by the thumb. Next, we're going to twist the needle towards the index finger, pick up the yarn from above and pull it back the same way we came. Okay, so we will go through this one more time. So we go under the middle strand, over the thumb, into that small loop that we created. Then we pick up the yarn by the index finger and we will pull it back the same way. And now we have the first 2 stitches. Now it's time to cast on the remaining stitches. This will look a bit different because the yarn comes from the needle and creates a V shape instead of a triangle like before. We will hold the yarn exactly the same. We will go under the thread of the thumb from the outside, and then we will pick up the yarn at the index finger and then pull through the same way. We are going to repeat this until we have 16 stitches. If you would like the space around your face on your balaclava to be a little bit smaller, you could choose to decrease the number of cast-on stitches. This will not interact with the rest of the pattern. Once we have the correct number of stitches, we're going to start stockinette stitch. This means we will alternate between knit stitches and purl stitches. We will have 2 different sides, one for the knit stitches and the other for the purl stitches. Hold the needle with the stitches in your left hand and keep the yarn in the back using your fingers. To do a knit stitch, insert the right needle into the first stitch. Then wrap the working yarn around the needle. Pull the needle back along with the yarn that you just picked up, following the same path that you went in. So we will do this again. We will go through the first stitch, we will get the working yarn from behind and go through the same way that we went in. And you will repeat this for the entire row. And now we have finished our first row of knit stitches. After a few rows, you will clearly see which side has knit stitches and which side has purl stitches. the right side will have a flatter, more braidy-like appearance, while the wrong side will have a more bumpy and textured. And now we're going to knit the other side with purl stitches. The working yarn should be placed in front of the needle instead of behind as we did before. Insert the needle from the right side under the working yarn and through the first stitch. Once through, pick up the yarn. I usually do half twist around the needle to ensure that I get the yarn with me out. Then pull the needle out the same way. You can place a finger on the stitch to ensure that you don't lose it. And now we will do the exact same thing with all of the other stitches, but be sure that you don't lose the stitches that you've already knit. When we're done, it should look like this. Now we can see that the purl side is more bumpy, and while the knit side is flatter and more braid-like. These 2 rows should be repeated until we've knitted a total of 24 rows. So now you will alternate between knit rows and purl rows. If you would like the hood on your balaclava to be smaller, you can choose to decrease the number of rows you've knit. For an example, you can knit 20 rows instead of 24. This is how it should look when we've knitted 24 rows. The next row should be a knit row. Now we are going to pick up stitches on both sides. For this, we'll need 2 stitch markers and a pair of scissors. We will cut the yarn and then tie a knot so that we don't lose any stitches. We will start by picking up stitches on the right side if you hold the side with the cast on stitches facing you. If we look on the edge, you can see that it looks like an uneven braid. This part will end up on the inside of the balaclava. Instead, we'll pick up the stitches in the row next to it. We pick up 1 stitch in each V shape. If you pull it apart slightly, you can clearly see that each stitch is divided into its own section. We are going to hold the yarn around our index finger, pull out an extra bit so that we don't lose the yarn end. Then we will find the first stitch and we will insert the needle and pick up the yarn from behind and pull it through. Make sure that you're working with your working yarn and not the loose end. You want to repeat this all the way across until we reach the other needle. When we are done, it should look something like this. The uneven braid we saw earlier has now ended up on the back of the work. We are now going to place a stitch marker to mark where the corner is. And then we will knit the remaining stitches so that we can reach the other side. It should look like this when we are done. So we have the stitches that we picked up on the right side, and then we have the 16 stitches that we cast on from the start. To pick up the stitches on the left side, we will continue from where we are now, but we need to pull out the needle to give ourselves a little bit more movement. Place a stitch mark before you start picking up all the stitches. We will pick up the stitches in the exact same way as we did on the other side to ensure that the uneven braid ends up on the inside and we get a nice and clean outside. When we have picked up all the stitches on both sides, it should look something like this, with all the stitches on the needles. And here we can also see how the uneven braids are on the inside. It's now time to start knitting, what should we call it, the body of the balaclava. Here we only knit back and forth with knit and purl rows, just like we did before. And we will begin with a purl row. We won't be doing anything with the stitch markers just yet, so let them simply just following along. And when the row is all finished, we will turn the work upside down and knit all the way to the last stitch before the stitch marker. When we reach the first stitch marker, we will remove the stitch marker by simply moving the stitch over and then back again. We'll knit the next two stitches together, creating a decrease. Knit them as a regular knit stitch, but instead of doing it through the front loop, we're going through the back loop. Continue knitting until you one stitch before the next stitch marker. Here we will remove the stitch marker and make a decrease. This time we will knit the next two stitches together as a regular knit stitch through the front loop instead of the back loop. Continue the rest of the row with just regular knitting. So now we've knitted the first two rows of the body of our balaclava. The edges will now slope down, creating a shape for the top of the head. From here, we will continue with the stockinette stitch until we are satisfied with the length. And we are ready to join the two sides together, creating the face frame. Once we've knitted to our desired length, it's time to join the two sides together and cast on new stitches to create the chin for the face opening. Our last row should be a right side row, so that we are now on the wrong side. From here we will cast on 10 stitches using the loop cast on technique. We will hold the right needle with the right side facing us. We will create a loop and place it onto our needle. You can do this by wrap the working yarn around your finger and then twist half a turn. Then place the loop onto the needle. Repeat this until you have 10 new stitches. When we have cast on 10 new stitches, we will join them together with the other side. We will do this by knitting as usual with knit stitches, and since the yarn comes from the right needle, the sides will automatically link together. And don't forget to place a stitch marker before you start knitting to mark the beginning of the round. Knit all stitches around the entire round, pulling a little bit extra on the corners where the newly cast on stitches are to avoid larger holes. The corners will become uneven regardless, but that's fine since we will finish off with an I-cord edge around the face frame. Now we will knit the lower part by simply knitting in the round on circular needles until you are satisfied with the length. You can try it on as you go to know where you reach the desired length. Now my yarn has run out and I will show you how I usually change to a new ball of yarn in the most invisible way possible. You can do this in several different ways, but I usually knit the old and the new yarn together for about 2 or 3 stitches, then drop the old yarn and continue with the new one. And remember to include both the old and the new yarns in the stitches on the next round. Here I'll show you that you can switch to shorter needles if that's what you prefer. I switched from 80 centimeters to 40 centimeters to show you the difference. The 80 centimeters is a bit hard on the stitches, while the 40 centimeter is a bit tight. In this case, 60 centimeters would be ideal, but both 40 and 80 centimeters also works. When we've reached the desired length, we will finish off with a nice and rounded I-cord edge. Okay, so we will start at the stitch marker and we will begin the round by knitting 3 stitches regular. We will then move those 3 stitches back onto the left needle. This means that working yarn will come from the 3rd stitch on the needle. We will then knit the first 2 stitches again. And the next 2 stitches will be twisted. We will do this by moving them over from the left side without knitting them. So not from that side, we will from this side. and then just lift them over. So we will do that to the 2 stitches, and we will then lift them back onto the left needle. So now these 2 stitches are twisted, and we will now knit them together in the back loop, so not like this in the front, but in the back loop like this, and we will knit those 2 stitches together. So not like this, like this. We go in the middle, just like we did earlier to the crease. We knit them together and have 1 new stitch. So we will now repeat this by moving 3 stitches back onto the left needle, so that the working yarn comes from the 3rd stitch. We will knit the first 2 stitches regular. And then move the next 2 stitches over to the right needle without knitting them, but we will move them twisted. And then we will put them back onto the left needle. Now these 2 stitches are twisted, and we will knit them together through the back loop. And we will repeat this all the way around. Okay, so we will repeat this again. We put 3 stitches back so that the yarn comes from the 3rd stitch. And we will knit the first 2 stitches regular. And then we will twist 2 stitches without knitting them and put them back on the left needle. Now these 2 stitches are twisted, and we will knit them together in the back loop. And then put them back and repeat this. So we will knit 2 stitches. We will twist the next 2 stitches without knitting them and put them back, and then knit those 2 stitches together in the back loop. And now we can see how the I-cord is starting to take shape. The stitches are laying horizontally, creating a wide curved edge. And we will repeat this all the way around until we have 3 stitches left on the needle. Now that we've reached the end, we need to join the beginning and the ends together. This can be done in various of ways, but the most important thing is to achieve an invisible transition. I usually knit the first 2 stitches together through the back loop, and then repeat this for the last 2 stitches. And when we only have 1 stitch left, we can cut the yarn and use a needle to carefully sew the ends together in a neat way. Try to replicate the stitch pattern to create a smooth and seamless transition. There's no right or wrong way here. Experiment and find what works best for you. Everyone has their own preferred technique to achieve the smoothest finish. The most important thing is that you're happy with the result. And now we're almost done. The only thing left is the I-cord edge around the face, which we will do in the exact same way that we just did. Before we can start the I-cord, we need to pick up stitches all around, and we will do this the same way that we did at the beginning. We will start at the bottom, just before the first corner, and when the stitches are vertical, like they are here, we will pick up the new stitches in the V shape. We will also go down 1 or 2 rows to create an invisible transition as possible. We will place a piece of yarn on the inside, and just like before, we hold the yarn with our left hand on the inside, and we use the needle and go in from the right side into the first stitch to grab the yarn and pull it with us through. And now we have our first stitch. And we will go into the next V and pick up another stitch. When we reach the corner, we will continue picking up stitches along the side, just like we did at the beginning of the work. And if you pull the rows apart a little, you will easily see where the little pocket of each stitch is located. And just like before, we will pick up the stitches right next to the uneven braid, so that it ends up on the inside of the work. Continue until you reach the top. And when we are done with the side, it will look like this. And at the top, we will do as before, we're going into the V shape of each stitch. We will continue picking up stitches along the rest of the round until we reach where we started. And when we are all done, it should look like this, and it's now time to do the final I-cord. The first stitch might be a little bit loose since it's connected to the yarn end, so pull gently on the end to tighten the stitch. And it's now time to do the I-cord. And we begin the round by knitting 3 regular stitches. Then we will move those 3 stitches back onto the left needle. And this means that working yarn will come from the 3rd stitch. We will knit 2 regular stitches and lift 2 stitches over from the left side so that they are twisted, and then knit those 2 together in the back loop. We will then put all 3 stitches back on the left needle and repeat this. So knit 2 regular knit stitches and then twist 2 stitches and knit those 2 stitches together in the back loop, and repeat this throughout the whole round. And now the only thing left is to connect the beginning and the end in a neat way. And just like I did before, I connect mine this way, but you can do the way that you prefer. The important thing is that we achieve a nearly invisible transition. And I do it by knitting the first 2 stitches together in the back loop, and I do the same with the last 2 stitches. And then I cut the yarn. I use a needle to carefully sew in the ends together in a neat way. I try to replicate the stitch pattern to create a smooth and seamless transition. And now your balaclava is all done, and the only thing left is to weave in all the ends on the inside. We turn it inside out, and when it comes to securing all the loose ends, there are several ways to do this. I think it's best when I sew the ends into the same pattern as the stitches, but the most important thing is that they are secured so that they don't come undone when we use the balaclava. And now the balaclava is all finished, but I will recommend you to block it for the best result. I hope this video has been helpful, and I wish you all happy knitting. Bye!